All right, we're live for a special session with Will Bridges on the job search strategy. I'm going to give folks a few minutes to tune in. Normally, when I'm doing my podcast, I get started right away, but this is meant to be an interactive and live session. So, I want to give folks a few minutes to join us. Please introduce yourselves in the chat. Will and I won't know you're there unless you introduce yourselves and say hi and ask your questions there. This is meant to be a session for folks to ask questions and get them answered. So you'll get out of this what you put into it. We want to answer any questions that you have. So please say hi to us in the chat and send your questions there. We'll give y'all a few seconds. Will, how's your day going?
Pretty good. Just haven't eaten lunch yet today or breakfast.
Same. Yep. Same. I did manage to get breakfast at a coffee shop, so I have eaten something, but I have not had lunch yet.
You know, I'm thinking sushi today, and I might.
Ooh. I like that.
Yeah.
Order some delivery sushi? Or are you gonna pick it up?
I think I might go in person today. I'm feeling like today would be a good in-person day for sushi. And I'm near the area. I just moved across town about 2 weeks ago, so I'm like, I need to go do some more exploring in this area.
Yeah. Hi, Miguel. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else here, please say hi. I want to hear from you, see who's joining us, and go ahead and start sending your questions. Hi, Bill. Nice to see ya.
Hey.
I know it does take a minute for the comments to integrate over from the platform you're viewing on to the platform that we're on. So please be patient with us as those cycle through. I would love to hear from you. I'm going to go ahead and turn our music off and go ahead and get started with our first question. So Will, you're an engineering manager who has been, I know, offering these 30-minute free sessions for job seekers. And I am a tech recruiter. I've been in the recruitment space for almost 3 years, supporting a lot of job seekers in IT and software engineering. And we know it's a tough market, and you took it upon yourself to generously offer your time and to meet with people to offer both advice and I believe some support and just, boosts of morale and just to be there for folks. So tell us a little bit about, your perspective as an engineering manager. Why did you want to do this?
So I had a good friend who, and I've actually had quite a few friends that have gotten laid off or had an issue in the past 2 or 3 months. But I had a really close friend who I helped mentor and get into engineering. He moved from construction into engineering about 5 years ago. And he was at a company that I helped get him into that I had left. But he reached out to me and was like, yeah, they just laid off 20 people. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I was helping him through the process, helping him update his resume. And, I thought about it. And over the years, I was like, I've gotten pretty good at finding jobs when I've gotten laid off. And other people find jobs. And so I was like, well, let me just offer some strategy sessions from the perspective of a hiring manager.
Yeah.
And so I just went to LinkedIn and was like, hey, I'll give 30 minutes out to anybody who wants it. I didn't really expect such a overwhelming response.
You weren't prepared for the floodgates to open.
I was not, because, I post on LinkedIn every once in a while, usually management tips or people tips, stuff like that. Just processing information, things like that, helping engineers think better, process things better. So I don't get an overwhelming response, but I was like, whoa, it was like, just flooded my inbox.
That's how I found you, was seeing that post. It had gone viral enough for me to find it.
Yeah. And so, I think I ended up scheduling like 60 of them.
60?
Yeah.
Wow.
A few people didn't show up, and then it led into my, I had to move. So I kind of postponed quite a bit, about 20 of them. But I ended up doing, I think overall, and then the people just reached out to me ad hoc. It was about 40, 43 or so. I kept a spreadsheet of everybody's issues and what, just in case, and their contact information. So I could reach out to them if something.
You kind of created a cohort of job seekers that you were supporting. What were some of the common themes that came up in the sessions of concerns or challenges people were facing?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, people had resume concerns because when you put your resume out there, you don't know if it's good. And if you're not getting a response, you assume it's your resume.
Yeah.
and rightfully so. Even thinking about it like an engineer, if your input's bad, your output's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So, like most of these engineers are thinking my resume must be trash. I'm not getting a response.
Did you find that to be true? Like when you would talk to somebody and see their resume, were you like, yeah, there's some things that I can pinpoint of why your resume's not getting any responses? Or did their resume look fine to you as a hiring manager and it's just likely not getting in front of hiring managers in all the noise?
We went through quite a few of like, there were certain people that their resume just wasn't presentable, or it didn't have enough information in it to make them stand out. And so some of those people, like I did help, and like I know at least one of them like was like they landed a job the next week.
Oh my gosh.
And like correlation is not causation. They might have just
sure.
the right
timing is everything. Timing, the right time, the right place. But
they did say that they got a lot more responses from their resume. And
what did you change about their resume?
Well, in his instance, like I focused on problem, solution, value narratives inside of experience, but also incorporating keywords inside of your skills. And he had a picture in his resume of himself.
Oh yeah, I gotta go.
In an very, how do I put this? Kind of an intimidating like look. Like he was like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, dude.
He was mean mugging in his shot. I love it.
I was like, and it actually made change my entire opinion on including photos inside of, because I know it leads to bias.
Totally.
But I do, being someone who really likes visual things, I do have an affinity for pretty resumes. Oh, it's a picture. I can see them as a person, and added color. But these systems that are automated, a lot of them
are not set up to interpret that kind of document.
Right.
Yeah. So you said you called it a problem solution value. Is that what you said? Narrative?
Yeah.
Is that something you came up with, or is that something that is pretty common among engineering folks?
I don't know how common it is. I didn't research it. It's just something I like to see. And I'm sure somebody else out there has said it better than me, but like, when I'm looking at experience, I want to know what problems you solve with what solutions, if you took the initiative to help solve the problem, and then what was the value to the company. And I think some people get caught up in the value part where it's like, well, I can't really quantify, like it was a % increase in, I don't know, pull requests or, 20% less bugs or something like that.
Right.
But I usually tell people to just use a word like substantial or some other like filler word if they don't have the actual data.
And you as an engineering manager, when you're seeing the filler words or like it was instead of a data point, if someone doesn't have a data point, would you still want to see that on the resume, even if it just says resulted in substantial improvements or substantial increases? Is that okay from your perspective as a manager, a hiring manager?
It's okay. Yeah. Like maybe
data's always better. Would that be fair to say? Data's always better.
Data's better. But I mean, if we're being realistic, looking at a resume, and I'm sure you know this, a lot of that's made up. Like
what? Well,
meaning they maybe exaggerated.
It's embellished. It's embellishment. That's what we like to call it in the South. It's embellishment.
Yes, embellishment. So it's not like an outright lie, but I kind of take everything I see in a resume with a grain of salt.
Sure.
And I'm really just kind of wanting to know, like, okay, well, like you focused on solving problems, because as an engineer, that's what we do. And sometimes code isn't always the answer. Like, it's just, I want to know that you solve problems.
Yeah.
And you care about that.
I'd love to hear from the folks in the chat, Miguel, Bill, anyone else who's here. How do you guys currently articulate Will's idea of the problem, solution, and value into your resume? What's hard about doing that? What's hard about including data points? I want to hear from folks in the chat and see some ideas there. This is something that's come up on my podcast as we've talked about how to advocate for yourself in the job search or when you're trying to negotiate for a promotion or raise. But we all really have to keep up with the achievements and the data points that we accomplish in a role, because otherwise when it does come down time to write your resume, you're going to have to, embellish some of it and come up with it a little bit on the fly. But I like to try to keep a document on my Google Docs of like what I'm doing in my role, and what I'm proud of. So when I accomplish something, I go drop it there so that I can add it to my resume later. And that tends to help when if you were unexpectedly laid off, you kind of have that ready to go. Because I was unexpectedly laid off last year and I was not prepared whatsoever. So I learned that lesson the hard way of like, it's really hard to retroactively create your resume, much easier to create it as you go.
Absolutely. And that's a big part of the advice I was giving during those sessions is, and it's more like woo-woo, but it actually has, you should always keep a wins list is what I call it.
Like, wins list, yeah.
Yeah. And even when even like personal wins and stuff like that, because if you're in this process of trying to find a job, it's very demoralizing. You need to remind yourself of your own value. But furthermore, to your point, we as humans don't remember our wins as much as we remember pain.
Remember the losses. Yeah, for sure.
We're just wired that way. So like I have my direct report right now, my direct reports, I actually keep a Notion page for each one of them with a wins section. And I ask them every one-on-one, like, what did you win on this past couple of weeks? And you'd be surprised how many people struggle just to remember what they won in the past couple of weeks.
I sometimes struggle on a daily. I've tried to hold myself accountable to posting daily wins on LinkedIn as a networking tool, because I think LinkedIn can be very powerful as a way to get your accomplishments out there and proactively network for when you might be on the job hunt unexpectedly. And we can talk about that as a strategy later. But it is even hard to think about, what did I accomplish today? Like even thinking back, like the scrolling on our phones and on LinkedIn can sometimes wash your brain of what you actually accomplished that day.
I think that's true. Yeah, very much so.
Someone joined us in the chat and said you should be tracking wins throughout your year for your current role. Those wins can be, put right into your resume. That way you're not scrambling to build a quantitative resume when you need one. Exactly. I think that's, and it's going to make you feel it's a little bit of a morale booster too. Like when I sit down to write down my wins from that week or that month, it's nice to remember what I'm accomplishing in this role. It fires me up for the next week. So it's good for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Miguel said it's hard for me to quantify in actual numbers of how a change I make to an application may reduce errors or increase efficiency. Tend to use words like you mentioned, Will, substantial or increased value.
Yeah, when you're and think about when you actually do get your next position, or if you're in a position, when you're about to do something, what is the value of this thing? Like, and that should be at the forefront of what you're doing, because it's like, well, I'm not just doing this thing to do it. There is a value associated with it. And then that may help you quantify it, but some things are just really difficult to quantify and they just need to be done. So using those words like substantial, increased value, reduced complexity, stuff like that, I think it's still valuable to include it. I would still want to see it. Too often people don't put stuff in their resume because they can't quantify it. Or it doesn't relate to a particular skill set, like meaning it's not in their skills section, which when we talked about that earlier, that is a key piece of advice I gave to people. Keep your skills section at the top of the resume.
Miguel has another question that I definitely want to bring up, but something that I've talked to candidates about is your resume has to articulate both your skills and where you use them, but how you used them and the type of environment you use them in and what you were using them for. So it's not just, I used Python. It's like, what did you use Python for? What did you accomplish? Because if I'm a recruiter, and I assume if you're a hiring manager, you want to know, can they use these tools and technologies, and can they use them to do what I need them to do in this job? So you have to be able to articulate that as well. Is that fair to say from the perspective of an engineering manager? I'm giving my recruiter 2 cents.
It is, but I don't want to see on every line, use Python to do X, Y, and Z.
What do you want to see?
I want to know that you use Python, because if you're in a position where Python is required, you're using it on a daily basis, it should be kind of like at the top of that. But if you're breaking down bullet points, you can mention Python here or there, but I don't want to see you repeat it like
You don't Python. You just want to see in the bullet points what they were doing in the role, and it's assumed that Python was part of the tech stack.
Yeah, I do. If the tech, and you can even call out the tech stack
at the bottom. Are you cool with that? Like, I know I've seen that on resumes.
Like under your, like under your time there and your role, like you can do the tech stack.
Yeah.
I didn't encourage anyone to do that, but that would be a good idea because that way you're not repeating yourself. Like,
I like it as a non-technical person, and I'll give my perspective from that angle, that it makes it really easy for me if they have the tech stack under each role to see, like, if I'm trying to decide for a client, okay, has this person used Python for 5 years, or were they only using it in that one role? If it's listed in the tech stack for the last 3 roles, I'm like, okay, great. I know they use that as part of their tech stack in their last 3 roles. So it makes it really easy for non-technical folks, which is part of the job hunt. You're going to have to get through some non-technical audiences sometimes, not always, but sometimes. Speaking of which, Miguel asked, how much attention should you pay to having your resume pass applicant tracking system scans?
Yeah, so you should run it through. There's a number of them online if you do Google it. And I've always told people just kind of run it through there and make sure it passes stuff. But, like you design for people and the computer. Like, so that's where it gets tricky, because if you try to get too fancy with your resume, it may not pass the ATS scanner.
Yeah.
But if you go too simple or make it like the smallest text possible, like, which I've seen people do in order to squeeze their resume on one page, then
I've changed the font color and found when I highlighted someone's resume and changed it all to black that there was all this text that was white that was hidden to get through the ATS. Yeah. Which, so if you're working with a recruiter, maybe send the human recruiter your human version and then have your bot version for the ATS.
Yeah, possibly. I've never given that advice, but I guess it could work. Like,
I don't get that. My advice is always to tailor the resume to the job you're applying for. Go look at the job description and see what they're needing that person to do. Tailor your bullet points to mimic that language. That applies across all industries that I've worked in. It's not just specific to IT. I'm
going to counter your advice there a little bit.
Oh, okay.
In this job market, I'm seeing as low as a 1% response ratio, like, which means you'd have to apply.
I see where you're going with this. Yeah.
Jobs to get 1 response. And so I've been, when people have asked me, like, do I break down my resume into different versions? No, I don't. I say that's probably not.
From a time cost-effective standpoint.
And morale. Like, it's, seniors might get a 5% response if their resume is good, but in this market, it's been lower than it should be. And so, if you put in 100 resumes and get 1 response, you're going to feel super demoralized. If you're spending 30 minutes tailoring your resume to each one of these job posts that aren't going to get back to you.
Yeah. So maybe I would counter, like, don't tailor. If you're just spraying your resume to LinkedIn job postings or Indeed job postings, don't tailor it in that instance. But if you are getting to actually have a human contact point where it's like you've spoken to Will Bridges, the engineering manager, and he says, hey, send me your resume, then maybe you put a little more effort into it. Or if you're working with a recruiter who's going to get it directly in the hands of a hiring manager, and the recruiter should also help you tailor your resume and make sure it's a good fit too. So
have done that for me. They'll be like, well, this job requires, X, Y, and Z. And they'll give me a Word version of your PDF resume, and they'll put the alterations. So yeah, I think
that's kind of how I do it when I will be on a Teams call just like this. And I'll be like, Will, like, I need to know, where you managed a team of 5 or more. Let's make sure that's listed here and let's put it in there together. Do you want me to write that in, or would you like to? And I get approval, from the candidate if I'm going to make any edits like that. Mm-hmm. We've got a lot more comments, so let's keep it moving. I know Bill said he has sent a ton of resumes, but keep getting recruiters contacting you with jobs that you're not qualified for ends up being a waste of time for everybody's parts. Yeah. There are recruiters out there that definitely give them, and I don't want to say that all of them have bad intentions. I think some out there probably do have bad intentions. Others just aren't spending enough time. They're going too fast and blast messaging way too many people. And so try to keep an eye out for recruiters that you think you can have an actual relationship with and who will actually get to know you as a candidate and understand what you're looking for and what your skill set is. Keep a few of those in your back pocket and reach out to them when you're on the job hunt. That's my take, but Will, what's your take on this? I'm biased as a recruiter myself.
I see recruiters as like the real estate agents of our industry. So they're out selling. Put it. Yeah, and they get a cut, and that's okay because you wouldn't have had those introductions anyway. Recruiters get a bad rap from a lot of engineers who are like, I can't believe they're making money off me. And it's like, of course they are, because you don't have those relationships and they're doing it for you. So I think make friends with as many recruiters as you can, no matter where you're on your career path. And that includes LinkedIn and wherever else you can find them. Because when you are looking for a job, if you have 100 recruiters on LinkedIn that you're close with or friends with, and they'll take you out for free lunches and dinners too. I got a recruiter a week and a half from now who's actually about to take me to lunch. So.
Nice. I love it.
So you get free.
Yeah, do that. Do some free meals. That won't be a waste of time. Even if the job sucks, it's not the right fit, you got a free lunch. So that's the fail safe right there. That's Will's pro tip for the day. Yeah, I think each one of us, when we're agency recruiters, we're working with a certain group of clients that we have opportunities with. They might not be the right fit for you. That's why Will's advice is key, is to get to know many different recruiters so you can get exposure to as many different connections as possible. Mm-hmm. But I do know, I commiserate with you, Bill, because I do know that there are recruiters that reach out that aren't looking at your profile in depth at all. And they are just sending a message to everybody they can select on LinkedIn Recruiter. And so I get that. It is frustrating. I get spam messages. I just try to delete them, archive them, move on. And I will say there are recruiters like myself out there who, even though we do everything we can to try to make sure a job's the right fit, sometimes until we speak to you, we can't know for certain if it's just like a nitty-gritty reason why it's a not fit. So there is that. We've got other folks commenting. We got one thing that helps keep track of your wins is organizational KPIs, things like reduced reported tickets, higher customer retention. If you have access to those numbers, absolutely, those would definitely be good KPIs to include if you have that data. Let's see what other questions are coming in the chat. I know, let's see. Miguel says, what advice can you give when you're creating a resume to transition to another position? How can you highlight the points in your current position that helps you in the new path you're transitioning to? That's a good question, because I think a lot of people in this market are pivoting to something new. And in my experience, it's really hard to break into something new. I was speaking to a developer yesterday who wants to become a Scrum Master. And even with the certs, like, it's really hard to land your first role in something when you haven't done it before, because clients are being super picky right now. And they are almost taking advantage of the market that we're in, that they know they can be picky, and they can require previous experience when maybe in a previous market they wouldn't have.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a buyer's market and sometimes it's a seller's market. So
it's always one or the other, it feels like.
Right. Going back to the real estate analogy. So, I mean, if you're trying to transition, this is not the time to get your first position in whatever new thing that you're trying to do. It's not like, I don't want to say give up on your dreams. Like,
Will's here to crush your dreams today. It's
a bad market right now. So, I mean, like, if you want to create a version of your resume that addresses those key points, like maybe you were, I don't know, a staff engineer or a junior engineer, but you handled a lot of things that were outside of that scope that are related to the career you want, you can create a resume for that as like a junior role and blast it out. But I wouldn't tailor it. I would just be like, this is just an additional way for me to apply to low-hanging fruit and that are in positions I would like to get to. But otherwise, if you're trying to get into that role, my best advice, whether it's a bad market or a good market, is to go into an organization with your skill set and then pivot inside of the organization to the other skill set that you want to utilize.
Yeah, this is where I would talk about networking and finding good connections at an organization you want to work for. So, Miguel, if you're looking to pivot into something different, identifying X number of organizations that are hiring, and like Will is saying, trying to get in your current type of position that you've been in for most of your career. Which if I remember correctly from when we spoke, Miguel, I think you're a developer, if I remember correctly. So try to get in as a developer. And if you're wanting to pivot to something different, like Will's saying, do it with the company that you already work for. But I think networking could be a great way to, you need someone on the inside that can advocate for who you are and what skills that are transferable that you would bring to this new position.
I've seen a lot of people saying referrals aren't even working as well as they used to work.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it's such a, heavy market for, or oversaturated market that you might not even get anywhere with an internal referral.
Yeah.
Speaking of the market, hi, Dustin. Good to hear from you. Dustin asked if there were any recommendations for dealing with the dumpster fire that is the current tech employment landscape. What have you been telling folks, Will?
So I've been telling people to apply to it, and you may not like this advice, apply to as many positions as you can, as quickly as you can. So anything that's like LinkedIn Easy Apply, obviously focus on the quality of your resume and make sure it's some of the other things we said about that. But once you have a quality resume, get it out to as many folks as possible. If you're only getting a 1% or 3% response ratio, you need to get it out to as many people as possible. The other thing is, in the meantime, give yourself something to focus on. So a lot of people will do, for engineers, they'll do like leak code exercises and stuff. I don't recommend that. Yes, it will help you with a tech interview. Maybe, probably not. Because the thing is you may not get whatever challenge you worked on. There's a lot of possible challenges in those exercises. So the better thing is to focus on providing value to people. Find a coffee shop that doesn't have a website. Find people in your network, friends and family that need some sort of technological solution. Go on Upwork, Fiverr. And even if you're not making a lot of money off of those because you're competing with foreign developers that can charge a lower price, you're still getting experience. You're increasing your network, and you're actually reminding yourself that you have value, and that's important. So I tell people to focus on doing work wherever they can while they're looking for a job, and applying to as many positions as possible, and engineering the process of applying to those positions by minimizing the effort and time that it takes to apply to those positions.
Tell me more about what you mean by that.
Okay. So, we talk about easy apply, but also cover letters are sometimes a pain in the ass. So you create a template for and a lot of people do this, but create a template for your cover letter and have a paragraph that you can swap for whatever you need to for that. And then also the company name that you can swap out and use it like a Mad Lib type scenario.
Yeah.
But look for, when you're trying to apply for, I'd say 10 to 15 positions a day. But I did more than that sometimes. I was optimizing for speed of application. Also, focus on, if you have 50% of the requirements for a position, you don't know if your resume might stand out in some other way. Still, so still apply to as many as possible. Keep yourself busy by actually working on things of value, and make sure that you're staying mentally healthy. If a position takes let's say it's an hour to get through their application process, only do one of those a day. Don't kill yourself, because there's still a good chance you're going to get the same response ratio of 1 to 3% or whatever it is based on your level of experience.
Yeah. How did you, and if you did, how did you keep up with all the jobs you were applying to? I know there's places like Teal that have spreadsheets to do this. Did you use something like that? So
I have a spreadsheet template, but I always recommend people only, so my template has the warmth of the lead, how interested I am, last date of contact notes, their contact information, and then what the pay was.
Okay.
I think I might be missing something. But anyways.
But you did try to keep a running spread so that if you ever did get a response back, you could be like, oh, what the heck was that? And you could go look back at your spreadsheet.
Hell no. Way too many. And I only put the ones in the spreadsheet that actually reached out to me.
Okay, so they go into the spreadsheet once you hear a response.
Yeah, and here's the problem with that. Somebody will call you and they'll be like, I'm from X company. Remember when you applied to? And you'll be like, No, I absolutely do.
This is my job every day. I'm calling people that applied to my job postings, and I'm like, hey, this is in regards to they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you applied. Here's your resume. You're a great fit. I'm calling you. And then
from your perspective, they're judiciously applying to each position. From their perspective, they're firing out resumes like a man, woman. So,
and as a recruiter, I'm not going to hold that against you. It's just my job to make sure you haven't applied on the company's website directly. Because if I'm going to represent you, I got to make sure neither one of us looks like an idiot double submitting you. So that's all we got to figure out from the recruiter point of view. Once we're figuring that out, then we're going to make sure you're geared up and excited to speak to the client, and you know what the role is, and we're all good. So if you're working with agency recruiters, that's kind of the take there. I did want to go back to something. I know we're at our half hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. You haven't even eaten lunch today, so I want to get you doing that. But want to go back to something you said about finding work, projects and things you can do to keep busy while you're on the job search, building websites for clients. Are those things that you could add to your GitHub as well? Because I know a lot of clients of mine will ask for the candidate's GitHub. So, can you be adding these projects there and kind of building your portfolio?
So there are things you could add to a portfolio website. I don't, most places, unless it's like somebody who doesn't understand the value of the code, like they're not going to let you publish that code to GitHub.
So GitHub would just be things you personally do at home, just.
Yeah, there may be like, because some people want to like tinker on things.
They're mock-up project type things.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't really look at, I know a lot of engineering managers do, but I don't look
50-50. They're like, are some engineering managers like, I have to see their GitHub, and then there's some that don't even mention it.
Yeah, I don't even mention it.
Mention it, yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at it if it's on your resume. I might be like, cool, all right. Especially if like you're talking about junior engineers, like I don't know how much of that code you wrote. Like,
yeah,
it could be just like a test you took from like a coding school or something.
Yeah.
So I don't really care.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah. Well, I know we are close to time. Dustin said he uses Teal and Google Sheets to track recruiters, applications, common responses, and common questions. Dustin, how do you like that? How do you like using Google Sheets versus Teal? I know Teal has some good resources out there. Share with us if you've enjoyed doing that. I know we're going to wrap up now because we're over 30 minutes. We did not even really touch on networking, LinkedIn, or interviews. We mainly focused on resumes and application strategy. This has been a wonderful session, Will. I appreciate your insights. I feel like this is super helpful for folks to hear directly from a hiring manager. If you want to come back to do another LinkedIn Live and we can focus on networking and interviews, let's do it. I may host one, give my 2 cents as a recruiter, but I appreciate you. And I appreciate everybody that's participated in the chat. Keep the questions coming. I'll keep an eye on them. And we'll continue to talk through some of this stuff. Thanks again, Will. I appreciate it.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure. And thanks to everybody.
Yeah. We'll see y'all next time. Enjoy your day.
Later.